Hello everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new tutorial. And I'm going to be featuring some of the newest products from Simon Says Stamp's STAMPtember release and a fun glitter embossing technique over top of Distress Oxide ink blending. So I'm using the new Harvest stencil from Simon Says Stamp, and I've sprayed some repositionable adhesive on the back side of the stencil so that way it will stick down onto my Strathmore Bristol paper very easily. To do my ink blending, I'm using Distress Oxide inks in a variety of different colors that are some of my most favorites. Because the stencil is tacked down onto the paper using the repositionable adhesive, I don't need any tape to hold this stencil down. I really find this handy if I spray this outside so that way I don't have any of those fumes from the repositionable adhesive adding that smell to my craft space. As I blend through these colors, which I have linked down in the video description below, I'm being careful to blend them together using one of the previous colors to help make sure that the transition between each two colors are nice and smooth. Now that repositionable adhesive lifts off the stencil from the paper very easily, and because we used oxide inks to do our ink blending, the oxide inks, because they have a partial pigment base to them, stay wet longer. So which means I can add this rainbow sparkle embossing powder from Brutus Monroe onto that stencil design, and that's going to stick to that Distress Oxide ink and create this beautiful sparkly effect once we've heat set that powder. I'm going to go ahead and die cut this background now using the big thank you script die from Simon Says Stamp, and this is also a new die that's part of the STAMPtember release. In this particular case, I'm not going to be using the positive portion of the sentiment, but rather using those negative areas to re-adhere my background panel together and create a negative effect for where the sentiment will read. So I'm attaching each of these negative panels down onto a card base that I've covered with some Tonic Studios Sugar Crystals glitter cardstock. I'm using foam tape to attach all of my negative pieces back down in place, and that gives me a beautiful negative effect to the sentiment. Now, one of the new products that is in the STAMPtember release, which I designed for Simon Says Stamp, are the new sentiment labels dies. Now, I don't know about you, but I love adding little sentiment banners to all of my different cards, and they're perfect for a variety of different sentiments. However, they sometimes aren't quite the easiest thing to get perfectly straight. So I had the idea to come up with a die set that allowed you to create sentiment labels for any size sentiment that you probably have in your stash. There's a variety of heights, and then the width are going to cover an entire portrait or landscape card. To use these dies, they're very easy. Once you've stamped your sentiment onto your cardstock, you'll just take one of the dies that works perfectly for the size sentiment that you're using the open areas of the die itself. I like to tape it down onto my paper just to make sure that the die doesn't shift when I run it through my die cutting machine. But in doing this, you don't have to try to fuss by cutting little tiny strips of cardstock using your paper trimmer, but rather you can use this die and know it's going to be perfectly straight and every single time. Now you can trim off the ends of those sentiment banners now to whatever length you'd like, and that gives you the perfect sentiment banner for any card that you're creating. I added that sentiment onto my card, and I also brought in some colorful sequins from both the Party Time and Birthday Cake sequin mixes that are part of Simon's STAMPtember release. I hope that this card has inspired you to not only try out this beautiful technique of doing some ink blending and adding some sparkle embossing powder over top of that Distress Oxide ink blended background, and I also hope that you're inspired to try out some of these new products from Simon Says Stamp and that they will add some really fun, creative ideas into your crafting projects. Thanks so much for tuning in. I will be back again very soon with more inspiration for you. On screen right now are links to my blog, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also to my latest videos. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again very soon, and have a great day. Bye!